Bienvenidos a Más Allá del Juramento, un espacio donde las voces de las fraternidades cobran vidas. En el vasto universo de las fraternidades hay figuras que brillan con luz propia. Hoy tenemos el honor de recibir un hermano cuya trayectoria es sencillamente excepcional. CORDOVES no solo ha abrazado los valores de la fraternidad, los ha multiplicado. Pertenece a más de 10 órdenes y organizaciones fraternales, llevando con orgullo sus principios, símbolos y compromisos a cada rincón donde su presencia se hace sentir. Su camino es un testimonio vivo de dedicación, liderazgo y espíritu fraternal. Un hombre que ha sabido unir logias, templos y corazones, siendo puente entre distintas tradiciones y generaciones. Hoy, en nuestro podcast, abrimos las puertas a una conversación única con un verdadero embajador de la fraternidad. Mi hermano, bienvenido. Muchísimas gracias por aceptar la invitación a nuestro pequeño espacio fraternal, Más Allá del Juramento.
No, we're welcoming you to be here with us beyond the oath and
Ya. Nuestra primera pregunta siempre es la misma para todos los hermanos. ¿De dónde es Mateo?
Mateo, Matt, either.
Where are you from?
Originally, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. My father's from Puerto Rico. My mother's from Philadelphia. I was born in Philadelphia, and I've spent the last 30 years in Missouri, central United States.
What got you started in your fraternal life?
I began my career in DMLA. I was 16 years old, and my dad came home with a brochure that said something along the lines of a youth group, and I used that as bathroom reading material. So as I'm reading through it, I realized that this was something that appealed to me. It was interesting, but there was no DMLA chapter around. And so I went out, I got 16 of my friends together, and we created a DMLA chapter in Rolla, Missouri. And that began my career in the enjoyment of fraternal societies.
So from day one, you were already creating lodges. It wasn't like there was a lodge for you to go into.
That's correct. I started my own.
Was it just your dad's moment of giving you that started your moment, or were there other members that helped you continue this fraternal?
My dad wasn't very active. He was active in masonry, but he had no knowledge of the DMLA program. I just used intuition, drive, and motivation, and I thought the program would be something worthwhile for the area. And so, like I said, I went out and got some of my friends together, and we started a DMLA chapter, and from there on, it began that bind in fraternity. You know, we were sponsored by the Freemasons, so we were exposed to Freemasonry. However, the elements weren't always tied to Freemasonry. They were tied to societal appreciation, you know, the values in DMLA, the values that we should hold as members. Love your parents, reverence for sacred things, courtesy, comradeship, fidelity, cleanness, and patriotism, the 7 core values of DMLA. And so I've implemented that in my daily life. And through that, I extended my fraternal career.
How many fraternities?
Now, what I tell my wife and what I belong to are two different things, because, you know, we pay a lot in dues. I would say right now, I probably belong to about 14 or 15 fraternal orders.
So this being the first time we have this podcast in English, I think you'd be the best person to explain all these different fraternities. What is the Independent Order of Oddfellows?
The definition of the Independent Order of Oddfellows, I think, is different from what our definition is. For me, the Independent Order of Oddfellows, founded in 1819 by Thomas Wildey, brought to the North American continent, is more than an organization, it's a movement. And the movement is that we should be taking care of our sick, we should be relieving our distressed, and we should be educating our youth. Outside of an organization, that's tenets as we as humans should carry. So for me, the importance of what the Independent Order of Oddfellows is that we not only practice those tenets, we share them with one another. So in this fraternity, we allow ourselves to better each other while we better ourselves. That is probably the difference in the Oddfellows compared to other fraternal organizations. The Oddfellows are more community-based. The Oddfellows are more family-based. The other fraternities fall along the lines of self-enrichment. So where the Oddfellows step in is we enrich those around us. You know, coming from a Hispanic family, you know how important it is, family, and how important it is that we encompass the values taught in those organizations. So in relation to the other ones, Oddfellows are more closely associated with the family or the nucleus of a family. But the textbook version is probably a bit different than what I just said. The textbook version will give you what Wikipedia says it is. I think it's more than that. You know, it defines our character and defines how we perceive ourselves amongst each other.
I think that's a great definition for our fraternity.
And Mason?
You are also a Freemason.
Correct.
What does a Freemason mean to you, and define it for us?
So D. Millay led me into Freemasonry. I actually was an Oddfellow before I was a Mason.
Okay.
Freemasonry is, again, a organization with its own tenets. However, it is more about self-enrichment. Freemasonry is an organization that's almost 400 years old. You know, most of your other fraternal orders in the age of fraternalism, the 1890s to the 1920s, all copied what Freemasonry was doing. In 1890, the Oddfellows had 1.2 million members. We were much larger than Freemasonry, and a lot of it was due to the benefits we offered. Freemasonry still offers those benefits to its members, not in the same form it did in those years, but it still does. But Freemasonry allows for more self-improvement. It allows me to learn more about the history and take that history and allow that to transcend my life, if that makes sense. I wouldn't say one organization is better than the other. They all have their values. But something I explained this morning to people, if I was in a room full of deaf people and I wrote on the board, give me one sign of what Oddfellows means to you, my sign would be this: the clasped hands. Now, if I asked them the same question, what does Freemasonry mean to you? It'd be the same thing. Mm-hmm. And what does the Knights of Pythias or all these other organizations mean to you? It'd be the same thing. So basically, it's togetherness, just under different labels. So we all share the same aims, same goals, same tenets. We just express them differently.
I love that. For the next few that we're going to bring up, has never been brought up in any of our other podcasts. You brought up the Knight of Pythias. Explain that to us.
Sure.
What is the difference? Because is there any chapter in Miami?
There's 3 lodges down here, not in the Miami proper area. They're going to be up towards Boca Raton. The Knights of Pythias was started in 1864 by Justice H. Rathbone at the urgence of President Abraham Lincoln. It was started by an act of Congress, making it a Title 36 organization, and the only fraternity started by an act of Congress. The purpose of it was to bring the troops of the North and the South together during the time of the Civil War in hopes that we could heal the country. Well, at that time, again, like other fraternal organizations, we offered benefits, whether it was sick benefits, insurance, burial. They all fell in line. And it was, I would say, competitive, but at the same time, we called them the Big Three: the Oddfellows, the Knights of Pythias, the Masons. They were the 3 largest fraternal organizations of the time. As the years passed, obviously, we've seen declines in membership in both. And unfortunately, we no longer have the organizations we used to from the Knights of Pythias in the Miami area. Nonetheless, they still exist and they still serve their purpose. However, we've dwindled in size like other organizations, whether it's civil or fraternal. But the Knights of Pythias, it resembles the Oddfellows in many ways. They do their rank work, if you will, or degree work in full costumes. The structure is very similar. The lodge setup is very similar. And the affordability is there. It's about the same price to join the Knights of Pythias as is the Oddfellows, whereas Freemasonry tends to be a little more on the higher side.
I'll tell you, the first time I heard about Knights of Pythias was through you. So I'm glad that you're here explaining it to us. And again, we're just going to go down the list.
Sure.
Some of the ones that caught our eye. You brought up that Demolai was your first fraternity, and you actually started your own lodge. Explain to us what Demolai is and what it could be, because what we've heard is that they're part of Masonry, and you've explained to me that it's not, but want to tell the audience.
Correct. D. Millay was started in 1919 by Frank Sherman Land. And in short, it was started because he saw a group of young men who had lost their fathers during World War I, the Great War. And they needed role models. They needed strong role models. And so he gathered 9 young men together with the assistance of Lewis Lauer, the first D. Malay, and they started a club. And the reason they chose D. Malay was there was a picture on a wall, and the picture was of a gentleman that looked just like that said Jacques D. Malay. And the young man asked and said, "What is that?" And he explained it was the last Grand Master of the Knights Templar, who served from 1298 to 1314 AD, and he was burned at the stake because he would not give up the location of his comrades. And so that form of camaraderie is what formed D. Malay. Today, we have approximately 3.2 million alumni. Most are obviously deceased. We are headquartered in Kansas City, and it is not a Masonic youth group. Frank S. Land stated at the very beginning that this is not a junior Masonic order, and it also does not qualify young men to automatically join Freemasonry. And so by that, I thought, you know what, I'm going to try something different. And in Missouri, we started a D. Malay chapter in an Odd Fellows Lodge. And within a year, that chapter was thriving. They initiated 12 young men in that year and became the #1 chapter in the state of Missouri. So the perception that it's been a Masonic youth group is not quite accurate. They have been traditionally and historically sponsored by Masons, but they are not a Masonic youth group. They are an autonomous, independent body that Oddfellows can sponsor, a city council can sponsor, the Knights of Pythias can sponsor. They can meet in your lodge. But what it boils down to is this is a group of young men aged 12 through 21 that you get to make an impression on, that you get to mentor directly. And so when these young men go on to become great people, doctors, attorneys, generals, you as a mentor contributed to their success. You were a positive influence in their life. We talk about giving back in the organizations, and that for me is my giving back. Is now as an adult, I still work with D. Malay. My son was a D. Malay. My daughter's boyfriend, is a D. Malay. And so it's become kind of a family tradition as well. But it's an organization for young men that any fraternal organization or entity could sponsor and provide the world with young men that are going to be productive citizens.
That's very interesting. A few weeks ago, Pedro had a podcast with 4 members that were Oddfellow youth from Cuba. And it was eye-opening because here I've never got to experience. There was a lodge, the Hijo de la Luz, from the Cabello de la Luz, and I was able to witness it, but I was actually too young to join. Having my daughter be 10 years old, I think it's a great thing to have for youth. I worked at a high school. I would love to see how we can integrate this with a school, and then that's something that I think it's a project that I would love it to be my project for the next 2 years.
So let me share something with you. Why the Knights of Pythias is important. House Bill 1317 in the state of Florida was passed 2 years ago, and the House bill stated that Title 36 organizations chartered by an act of Congress, cannot be discriminated against in soliciting members in public schools. So recently, the Knights of Pythias, the Grand Lodge of Florida, decided to endorse or sponsor D. Malay as their official program, which now allows D. Malay into the public schools to be able to recruit members. I think that's very important that we are able to get into the schools because that's where kids are. But it's just another way, and the organizations can work together. And the Junior Oddfellows is a wonderful organization, but we also have problems. We have hurdles we have to look over. And unfortunately, in 2025, we live in a society where we have bad actors. And the problem with the Junior Lodge and establishing the Junior Lodges in Florida, for instance, or anywhere, is risk management. We run into the issue of the young men or the members being protected against bad actors as adults. And unfortunately, we've all heard of cases where young people were sexually assaulted by people who they trusted. Well, the Oddfellows, unfortunately, in the Sovereign Grand Lodge level, they don't have a system set up for insurance liability to take care of the youth. They also don't have the advisor training, the mentor training for the adults who work with the youth. And that's where D. Malay comes in. Through our international headquarters, every young man that joins D. Malay is automatically insured. All the adults we have that work with our youth are all federally background checked. Once they pass that background check, they have to go through an advisor training online and then an in-person hands-on training that teaches them the proper way to work with youth. It's all through the Youth Protection Program. And that's why I try to promote D. Malay over the junior lodges, is because we do have those protections in place for the kids. And for me, as a retired police officer, it is the utmost importance to protect our kids, to protect our youth.
They said you brought that up to me a few days ago, and I think it'd be very interesting to get the Oddfellows here in Florida involved with MLA and use that as a catalyst for new membership.
We'd love it. We'd love it, especially a Spanish-speaking chapter. We currently don't have any, and we'd love to have one. Not in Florida.
Not in Florida.
Not in Florida. We do in Puerto Rico, and of course our other countries. DMLA is located not just in the United States and North America. We're in 23 other countries. Oh, wow. One of our biggest jurisdictions is Brazil. Brazil and Bolivia. They are probably the biggest we have.
Wow, that's interesting.
Lots of members. Lots and lots of members.
I have a few others, and you said 14. We're not going to go through all 14, but a few others that caught our eye. The Grotto.
Grotto. Grotto, the best to explain it, is the poor man's Shriners of the Masons. Grotto was started in 1889, a few years after the North American Shrine, and it offers the same fun and social atmosphere as the Shriners do, with the difference of, obviously, one, affordability, and secondly, grottos usually meet in lodge halls or they have their own buildings. They're generally smaller. My Shrine Temple in Missouri has roughly 1,600 members. It encompasses a certain area, whereas my grotto has about 55 members. So it's a lot more intimate. You get the same experience as you would in the Shrine. It has its own philanthropy. The grotto we provide dental care for special needs children free of charge. The Shriners obviously provide orthopedic care and burn care for children. So each has their own charity that they focus on, but I tend to gravitate more towards the grotto because of that intimacy and the closeness and their charity.
So I didn't know that the grotto was that similar to the Shriners. As a kid growing up here in Miami, the only time I got to see the Shriners were at the parades.
Absolutely.
So other than the parades and the fun that they would have spraying water at everybody, what else do the Shriners do?
So obviously they're known for their Shriners hospitals. Don't quote me, but we used to have 22 Shrine hospitals in North America and Mexico City. We also had, I believe, 4 burn centers. These Shriners themselves provide free care to children in need. Some states don't have a mandate where the children have to have insurance. So the Shriners step in and cover this, whether it's spinal issues, fibular torsion, or issues with orthopedics, or cleft palate. Shriners hospitals are there to take care of these kids in need. And so us as Shriners, our monies and our work goes towards that charity itself. We also provide the transportation to families, flying them or driving them to the burn center and or the orthopedic center. So again, similar to the grotto, but the Shriners have been around a lot longer and, of course, more well-known. And, of course, we're known for our parades, little cars, and circuses.
Tell you about the circuses.
Absolutely.
I have one more. I have 2 more. But the Solomon's Tribe Widow's Son. So we know the Masons as the Widow's Son. But so this is another...
It's the same program. They have chapter names.
Okay.
And so at the time, I was heavily into motorcycles. I was a motorcycle patrol officer. And we started a Masonic riding group, and the name of it was Solomon's Tribe. King Solomon, of course, is a key figure in Freemasonry, and we wanted to tie it into our culture that we built for this organization. So we started Solomon's Tribe, and we rode motorcycles, and our cause that we rode for was Wounded Warrior. That was the project that we chose, and all of the money that we had accrued and raised went to the Wounded Warrior Project for veterans.
The next one is important to a lot of our lodge members here in Manuel Bosacovich, as they were all members of a Samaritan lodge in Cuba. So was my father, and I would hear the stories of all the practical jokes. It was interesting to hear that there's still an Amos Lodge, or multiple Amos Lodges in the state of Florida, and that you're part of one. But the Independent Order of Oddfellows doesn't have Amos anymore, correct?
So the Independent Order of Oddfellows, the Sovereign Grand Lodge, never has officially recognized the Ancient Mystical Order of Samaritans. But a requirement to join the Ancient Mystical Order of Samaritans, or AMOS, is you have to be a 3rd degree Oddfellow. I started my sanctorum in 2003 in Missouri. Again, a young person. I gathered about 20 odd fellows together, and we started a traveling sanctorum. So it met in St. Louis, it met in Columbia. But we did this so that way it catered to the members and we weren't locked into a geographic area. But I would love to hear the stories that your dad and them told, because the fun is absolutely correct. I wouldn't say it's debauchery by any means, but there's a lot of tomfoolery. The degrees themselves are not taken seriously. The ritual work is more fun than it is serious. But I value my membership in Amos simply because it takes an already fun organization like the Oddfellows and makes it more fun. Sadly, there's not more Amos Sanctorums in the country. Maybe one day the tide will change, but I think it'd be great for Miami to have at least one.
We got a lot of work on our hands. That's something that we've spoken to Pedro about, to have a podcast just on the Samaritans from Cuba. Like I said, there's a lot of our members that were in it, and they fondly speak of it every time we're having conversations. So hopefully we'll cover that topic soon.
The great thing is I think you only need 5 to start one, so it sounds like you're about halfway there, if not all the way there already. But it's a blast. Instead of a gavel, they use a scimitar. There's a lot of signs and ways of adoration that as it's going on, you smile and laugh even during the meeting. But I would strongly encourage you to look into it. I think it'd be great for this area. I really do. And you would have all the support from the organization.
Now that you brought up another idea for Miami, how do you deal with your time management with family, with friends, and your 14 or more fraternities?
That's probably the most interesting question, and I can show you my calendar, and it's absolutely just ridiculous. I've always said this. In these organizations, 10% always do the work for the 90%. You could have 300 members, and you most likely will get 15 to 20 out that do the work. And I've always put myself in the 15 or 20. I like to stay busy. I like to stay involved. More than anything, I think it's a passion of bringing people together. So my involvement in all of these is rewarding in the sense that I get to get out once a day, maybe once every 2 or 3 days, and be among those that I really enjoy. And that's saying that my family's not, but it just doesn't have the same feel and appeal. My kids are grown. My daughter's 21, my son's 18. My wife and I of 26 years are empty nesters. So I've got a little more time on my hands to enjoy this. I took a break during my full-time law enforcement career. I worked night shift for 8 years. I became the assistant chief of police, and there was a lot of duty to that. And so my fraternal involvement backed off just a little bit. Now that I'm out of that career and I've slowed down a little bit, now I have more time to get involved. And I think it just boils down to you have to pick and choose. You have to pick and choose where you want to be invested and where you feel the most investment coming to you. And I don't mean that in a monetary way. I come to the Oddfellows because the people are genuine. They're authentic. You may not have that in every organization, but I have that in the Oddfellows. And so I want to be around authentic people because it inspires me. That's how I do it.
You brought up your time as a police officer.
Correct.
You bring up all the fraternities you're in. Are you a fraternal police?
I'm not.
You're not?
I'm not. I enjoy the lodge room atmosphere, and the Fraternal Order of Police is more of a membership-based association. I'm not quite into that. I like the secret signs, the secret handshakes, and when that door is closed, what we do in here. I like the work we put together and the things we achieve.
It's interesting. We originally our lodge was going to. We reached out to them first to rent the hall because it's in the area. We're reaching out to them now again because we're having a meeting with all the fraternities here in Miami, and we would love for them to be here.
That'd be great.
It's interesting to have fraternities that are not commonly spoken about within our communities, with our fraternal communities, and I would love just for them to be a part of it.
I think that's the biggest problem is that fraternities have been secret societies for too long. We're not out in the community enough. We're not visible enough, and we need to be.
Agreed.
We are a fraternity of secrets, but we're not a secret fraternity. So I think that's where a lot of our organizations, we fail, is that we don't get out there enough and make the public aware that we're here and what we stand for.
All right, so this is a part of our podcast that we let you gloat a little bit. What have you brought to fraternities as a whole? What's the biggest thing you've brought to all the organizations you're in?
I try to stay humble. I've got a lot of titles. I presided in every organization dang near that I belong to. I think what I bring is drive and motivation. I think my tenacity has led me to where I am. I don't give up. I stay on course. If I have a goal in mind, I reach the goal. I don't stop. I don't stop any forward momentum getting to that goal. I get to the goal, I achieve the goal, and I move towards the next goal. And I constantly maintain that goal mindset. I think that's what I bring to the table, is that I've maintained that. I've stayed tenacious, and I've promised myself not to give up, even when it gets tough.
I think it's very important. If you set your life for goals, then you never stop.
That's right.
What moves you to keep creating these goals?
That's a great question. I don't know that I've ever thought of what moves me. I think it's just the people around me. People like yourself, people like Morris, people who I see doing great and they pour their passion into it. I think that inspires me to I don't want to say maintain mine, but it inspires me to be even more than I am. I see what you do down here. I see that this lodge down here is thriving, and it's the pillar of what we should be doing in Odd Fellowship and every other organization, rather. I gave your booklet from the event that you had recently. I think it was the 1-year anniversary. I gave that to some members of the Knights of Pythias and said, look what this group does. Look how involved they are. Look what they do for their people. Things like that inspire me. So the more work that you do, the more inspiration I get, because I want to be like you.
Thank you for those. Thank you for those
absolutely
humbling words. We'll give you more of those if you want. What do you see the future of fraternities, and how do we keep achieving the goal of getting more youth involved? We know them alive, but what other options do you see?
Statistically, you're looking at the decline of fraternal organizations, and we have been. We find that every fraternal organization membership spike happens after a war. We know that. The data shows that. Well, this generation hasn't been challenged. They've never faced war. And so therefore, our momentum, our sense of pride has basically plateaued. I don't know that I have the answer for what we're going to do moving forward. I think what we have to look at is societal shifts. Look at the 1950s, the 1960s, and 1970s. What kind of TV shows did we have? We had Brady Bunch, The Partridge Family, Andy Griffith. You had shows centered around core family values, traditional family values. And then as we get into the 90s, we go from the 80s, Full House, Alf, in the 90s, we start to see shows like Sopranos and Dexter, shows that are more individualized. It's focused on one person, the main character. But as we get into the 2000s, 2010s, we see shows like Survivor, American Ninja Warrior. We see shows that are focused on one person. And it's me. America's Got Talent. It's bringing attention to self.
One person, yeah.
Whereas before we were bringing attention to the values. I think in order for us to get back to a sense of fraternalism, we have to have a societal shift to where we look at our values that we have as a country, as a culture, and we realize how important they are, that they're not supposed to be just put aside. And I think that's what we've done in the last few decades, is we've put those values aside and we focus more on ourselves. So I think getting back to the traditional family values will see the expansion of fraternal societies again, or at least keep us afloat. As far as the youth go, the youth have to see the value in it as well. As well as I do, adolescents don't see the value in reverence for sacred things, or value in honoring your neighbor. We as parents have to continue to instill that. And I think that's culturally based, depending on where you're at. New York is going to be different than Idaho, is going to be different than Miami.
100%.
And so I think we just have to come together as a society and look at our values and what we value and find some common ground.
when talking about youth, it's like I'm fifth generation Oddfellow. When it comes to fourth generation Oddfellow, fifth generation Knights of the Light, when it comes to bringing in new members, especially those 18 to even 40, I think the internet has affected. One, it already brings something for them to be entertained scrolling all day, so they don't want to even leave their house. But the other thing is that they look at us as a cult.
Sure.
What do you say to those potential members to explain to them this is not a cult?
Great, easy question, easy answer. Point to me a cult that donates millions of dollars to charitable organizations. Point to me a cult that operates hospitals for burned children. Point to me a cult that does fundraising for special needs kids so they get dental care. Because if you're calling that a cult, then I'm a proud cult member. And I think that stops them in their tracks when they realize just how much we do. Understand, people fear what they don't know. That's human nature. Any potential member will ask three things of any organization. Number one, what is it? Number two, how much does it cost? And number three, the question of all, what do I get out of it? And the third question is usually the hardest question to answer, what they get out of it. The others we can answer. But in reality, like I said, I think us coming together is the key in all of this. And hopefully even this podcast can help shift some tides.
So, the third question. If I had a young person in front of me and they asked that question of what do I get out of it, what would your answer be?
I think that's going to have to be, I wouldn't say individually lodge-based, because your lodge may do something different from my lodge. But that's exactly it. What are you looking for is what it boils down to. If you're looking for member benefits, if you're looking for some kind of an insurance plan, we are not here for you. But if you're looking for self-enrichment, if you're looking to be a part of your community, if you're looking to help others for no other reason than to do it, then fraternities are for you. That's the question that has to be answered is, what do I get out of it? You get out of it what you put into it. If you put nothing into it and you pay your dues, that's all you get is a piece of cardboard, a piece of paper that shows you're a member. But if you put into it, you can sit here and have all the bling on your chest or have a podcast to be able to talk to others about what they're putting into it. So I think it's, again, goes back to, it's all a matter of what you're willing to give.
All right, so I think I got two more for you. What is your biggest dream that you want to, I'm going to have three. What's your biggest dream that you would like to accomplish in any and all your fraternities?
I'd love to see them grow. I would love to go to a Oddfellows Grand Lodge and see 300, 500, 1,000 people there, all putting in the work for the organization. That is absolutely my dream. I'm big on growth. I'm big on membership. In my career, I've brought in over 50 Oddfellows. For me, it's that togetherness. It's what I talked about with the deaf people. You know, is putting your hands together and clasping. That's what I'd like to see out of it. I'd like to see us grow. I'd like to see us as a household name again. I would love to be able to walk into Walmart or any other store and say, have you ever heard of the Oddfellows? And them go, of course I have. My dad was an Oddfellow, or my grandfather was. Not go, the who? The what? I would love for us to be a household name again in all these organizations.
Agreed. And I think that's the goal. We're not a secret society.
That's right.
It should be open and bring more people in, get more attention.
That's right.
These two are we like to close every segment with the same two questions. What would you like your legacy to be the day you're no longer with us?
He was driven, he was honest, and he had integrity. That would be the three things I would remember for. Not that he went out and got a bunch of members, restarted this lodge, but he had the drive to do it. That would be what I want to be remembered as, just the drive. I don't care about the titles and everything else. But hopefully someone can mimic that and take that same drive that I had and continue with that forward momentum. Continue to drive, continue to grow.
And I'd like to establish that this is not an Oddfellows podcast. This is beyond the oath. And you take an oath. You took an oath when you became a police officer.
Correct.
You took an oath when you got into medicine.
Correct.
But you have 14 fraternities. If you had to pick one,
I have always said this, and this is the truth. If someone came to me today and said, Matt, you had to quit either Freemasonry or the Oddfellows, I would quit Freemasonry over the Oddfellows, and I'll tell you why. For me personally, I have always felt that the Oddfellows, the people that are members of the organization and these lodges, they're authentic. They don't have egos. They're not looking for titles. They're there because they want to be. They're there because they believe in it. They're there because they believe in those around them. That, to me, is genuine. I've been a Freemason for almost 25 years, and while I enjoy the fraternity, I've seen the egos and I've seen the attitudes in different parts of the country that have tarnished either a lodge or the organization to where there's turmoil. And like I said, I feel that the Oddfellows share the more of the authenticity in the individual compared to Freemasonry. So Oddfellows would win, hands down. And I'd probably save a lot more money too. My Masonic lodge dues are quite expensive.
We could probably compete with that. Is there anything else you would like to say?
If I could add anything, is get out there. Make this organization what it can be. Make these organizations what they could be. Take the bushel over that light and make the community aware of who you are, and what you stand for. We need more community members in here. We need good people in here. That's what makes these organizations thrive. And that's what I would leave you with, is continue to pass on what these organizations stand for. Make them grow. Make them household names again, and grow with them.
I'd like to thank you for coming over. It's been our pleasure to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Pedro stepped out because he realized that this was going to be an all-English podcast, but we're going to translate it for everyone. I'd like to say that with every word that you gave us today, you left the echo of your legacy. This is what this podcast is about. We'd like, today you've reminded us what true fraternity means, and it's not measured by the titles, but it is by the acts that illuminate our path. We would like for this podcast not to just be a memory, but that it would help with the spirit of all our fraternities.
I hope the same as well.
When your words are truthful, then your compromise for the fraternities is also truthful. Your history and your creation of lodges, everything you've done is written in honor and with honor. And we would like to thank you from Más Allá del Juramento. Thank you for being with us, and we hope that you can guide us in the future, because like I've told you in private, and I'll say it here publicly, my wish is that within the next 2 years is that we do get started that Demalai chapter in Spanish here in Miami. Not just for us, but for members like Morris, like Humberto Aguilar, like Super Silvestre and Humberto Laurent, all that started as Oddfellows Youth, but also for the namesake of our lodge, Manuel Bosakowicz, that he started the youth, the movement of youth lodges in Cuba. So thank you, and hopefully you can guide our way.
Hopefully I can have the same drive that Manuel Bosakowicz had.
Thank you.